Hello and welcome to a year-ending special on Tete by Fresco Media. As always, I'm joined by a few very esteemed guests and some of whom have braced this podcast over the last 3 months. It's been a decent start to our life as Tete, so it's great to bring all the guys on board for the final hurrah of this year. Joining me is Rick. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me back on the podcast.
And of course, the loyal member of this podcast, Sid.
What's up? How's it going?
And our Indian football expert, as I'll repeatedly call him, Dibo Bhattacharya. How are you, Dibo?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, and good way to finish off the year with a bit of a special episode. We're going to talk about certain moments that have captured the season and a year like no other, really, because there's been quite a lot that has changed the way that we look at football, how football has delivered, and there are many stories that you wouldn't have even thought of at this time last year. So, great to have you guys with us. Before we start, I want you guys to tell me, is there something that you thought about at this point last year and something that never even came close to fruition?
So this time last year, I was hoping, like Arsenal, as you must know, were in a pretty tough spot at this point last year, and the idea was I hoped we would kind of be a little bit more stable than we are currently, because currently we don't seem like the most well put together team, and I feel like my hope was that we'd be a little bit more compact, a little bit more solid and stable, consistent, and that hasn't come to fruition at all.
Same with Arsenal. Regarding Arsenal, I think I was pretty sure we wouldn't repeat the mistakes of the past, and you could see that we had kind of shifted to a European model of having a CEO and a director of football who handle things, and there'll be a coach rather than a manager who handles almost every other aspect of the departments in the club. But then, unfortunately, we've come back to that model where Edu and Arteta are going to be handling everything revolving around the football side of the club. And Raul Sanelli, unfortunately, had to leave the club under very cloudy circumstances. And again, you can see the scattergun approach to recruitment and the leaks that have been going into the media regarding what's been happening at the football club. And it's fun and games and other fans are making fun of us as a banter club, but we as Arsenal fans, I think it's becoming really disheartening to see what's happening with the club. And I think a lot of it has to go down on Stan Kroenke and the way that he's managed his football club and his extreme lack of regard for the club and the identity that we had as a club, especially under Arsene Wenger, and the way we conducted ourselves on and off the pitch. So yeah, I do hope that now there is hopefully some semblance of stability, like Rick said, that comes back to the club, and moving forward we're in a better position hopefully at the end of 2021.
And Dibo, yourself, a big year for United after what was a very disappointing 2019?
I think absolutely. I think this time last year, United faced a big dip in form before Bruno came, and I think that was something that was extremely disappointing for a United fan because we had invested a lot in the summer, the Maguires, but I think everything that has happened since, except for going back to the Europa League again, I think Ole has moved on the deadwoods in the team. He's brought in a few good players, and I think since then, up until 2020, I think the ride has been pretty good for United.
Yeah, I think Oli is the deadwood. But anyway, let's carry on.
We started the banter that early.
Opening the can of worms, I guess. I think we could go on for days talking about some of the things that have gone wrong this year. But let's look at what's gone right, and particularly for which club it has gone right the most. I mean, there have been a lot of successful clubs this year. Of course, Bayern Munich won the Champions League. Liverpool won the Premier League. Bayern defended their Bundesliga title. PSG won the Liga. Real Madrid had a very good lockdown period to clinch La Liga. And we even had Juventus notching the 9th title in a row in Serie A, which is insane to think about. So, Sid, what is...
One second, let's not forget Arsenal won the FA Cup as well, no?
Oh, and Community Shield.
Never forget.
Can't forget
Small
that.
joys of life.
Of course, titles are titles according to Sid, so let's keep it at that. Sid, what is your football club of the year? Which club do you think has been the best this year? And that the metric of performance is based upon your interpretation of what it is.
So, before the pod, when you asked us this question, I was thinking maybe, Leeds, just because of the story around the club and the fact that they've come and finally got promotion into the Premier League again after almost 18 years. But then when you look at it from a very unbiased angle, I think it has to go to Bayern Munich because they won the treble, and as a club, especially, I think it's their 9th title in a row right now in the Bundesliga. Um, the way that they've handled themselves in terms of recruitment, the aura that they have as a club, the stability they have as a club, and of course, I think their recruitment has been excellent because they have an extremely good blend of youth and experience. And credit also needs to go to Hansi Flick for the way that he's come into his first managerial job and totally changed the situation of the club, especially when he took over Niko Kovac, who was unfortunately sacked. But I think in hindsight, it was
Wait,
a
what do you
correct
mean?
decision.
Unfortunately, he had to go, right? I mean,
I believe that you need to give time to a manager sometimes. Like, of course, like some United fans are going to come and tell me, look, you keep saying that Ole is not good enough. Ole is not good enough. Listen, this has been 2.5 years. But, okay, Niko Kovac had a season where, of course, they did finally win the title. And he did kind of try and implement his stamp on the squad where he told, okay, some of the experienced players like Jerome Boateng and Thomas Muller that, might be time for you guys to move on. And a new generation of players need to come in. And I do think that is good because all teams need to kind of have that transitional phase in order to move on to a new generation of players that are going
But
to
did he try?
But
But,
don't
but
you
did he
think-
try that transitional phase a little early?
Yeah, because don't you think as soon as Hansi Flick took over, you kind of saw a new Muller that was
Exactly.
absolutely
Yeah, that's what.
dominating the Bundesliga and then the Champions League. So essentially, if Hansi Flick could get performances like that out of Bayern Munich, you have to take that away from Niko Kovac, right? You have to say that that's a kind of red flag because Hansi Flick did so much better as soon as he came into the club.
But
Yeah,
I do agree
Rick,
because
you mentioned that Bayern is your team of the year, and I think what you said about Niko Kovac going out, I think that was a big change for them because Bayern were nowhere. Let's face it, right? They weren't even the top 2, top 3 of Bundesliga when Niko Kovac was
but
fired.
Shreyas,
which
it's
is
it's not
unbelievable.
like they weren't successful before. It's not like they've been going through a period of where they've not had success. It's just that the club. Let's not forget, it's not like he took these decisions without informing the hierarchy, saying that this is what I have as a plan for the club going into the future, and we need to get in the young players that we have. They have an extremely good bunch of young players, and kind of set them up for the next decade or so at Bayern Munich, because we all know that they really believe in having a kind of a dynasty at the club, in the sense that a lot of players need to be at the club. Like a lot of their players have been playing for the club for 10 plus years, and they kind of see that with the youngsters going now. Of course, in hindsight, I'm wrong in the sense that I do agree Hansi Flick has done wonders, but I just feel that what Niko Kovac was trying to do was not just results on the pitch. He was trying to create a new kind of not culture, I would say, but a new way forward for the team by bringing in the youth into the team. And I do feel that, yeah, they did win the treble, so you can't argue against that. But I could see what Niko Kovac was trying to do, and I do think he'll do well at another managerial job.
Reminds me of Thomas Tuchel and why he's out of the PSG job. Dibo, what have you made of the teams this year? Who has impressed you the most?
I think I've gone for Leeds, and not just because of the story, because of the kind of football that they've played in the
Oh,
championship.
you've fallen for the Leeds bandwagon, haven't you?
No, it's not just the bandwagon, because you could say probably other championship teams have qualified with more points and with more goals. Yes, there are statistics to say that, but I think it's the way that the Leeds have gone about their football is different than any other club in the Premier League or in the championship that they've played. It's a different way that a coach has come in and changed the culture of the club. Because and even after the first year under Bielsa's, when they couldn't qualify, they lost to Derby. I think they had to let go of a lot of players. They had to let go of Pontus Jansson. They let go of who was that who went to Anderlecht.
I know who you're talking about. Anderlecht, or it was
No, he went to Anderlecht. I'm pretty sure he went to Anderlecht. I forgot. But anyway, I think even
Kemar
with their,
Roof, wasn't it?
Kemar Roof, yes, correct. And I think even with their with all the financial constraints they have, the way they obviously got the automatic promotion spot, and how they have performed in the Premier League also. You can always accuse Leeds to be ignorant about their defense, to be very naive in their approach to the games, but they bring a different set of energy, and it's something that's very refreshing to see. And I think they've been pretty successful considering the kind of squad they have. So that's why I think Leeds this year has been the club of the year for me.
And just to give you guys my thoughts on the club there, I can't ignore AC Milan, who've had an unbelievable 2020. It is crazy to think that maybe this time last year they were thinking of bringing in Ralph Ragnick as their long-term replacement for the failures of managers who've come in and gone out. But to hire in Stefano Pioli and the kind of change that's been witnessed on at Milan is insane now. I mean, to be top of Serie A heading into Christmas and to have the best record in the Serie A by a country mile in this calendar year is testament to the amount of work that's gone behind. So I think in terms of their numbers, I think they're the only unbeaten side in the top 5 leagues in Europe, which is crazy this season. So props to them, and I hope they get back to winning ways in terms of titles. Let's see what goes on. Moving on then to the manager of the year. Rick, who have you gone for?
So I had to go for Hansi Flick, just because, as I said before, I think the way he revitalized the team that looked kind of clueless, I would say, under Niko Kovac. This is why I don't particularly agree with what Sid was saying, where I felt like they were kind of out of sorts under Niko Kovac, and then with Hansi Flick coming in, they just their record. I feel like I saw their record and it was just a bunch of W's, right? Like, and I think there was one draw in the middle, and I feel like just how much he's revitalized that team to then go on to win the Champions League, dominate Barcelona like they did, play some phenomenal football, and then go on and win it. I think it has to be Hansi Flick for me, and also winning the treble, of course.
Yeah, I think Hansi Flick is definitely. I think he didn't get the official award, but for many he should have. The FIFA.
I think
Best
Klopp
coach of the year.
himself was kind of surprised when he did get it.
Club called him and said, "I don't deserve this." But
Well, it doesn't match the level at which Cristiano Ronaldo gave up an award for Lewandowski. does it? But anyway.
Surprise of the year, man. And where did he get this? I think it's a Christmas, it's a New Year, it's a resolution is taken to be humble. Very Cristiano Ronaldo
I mean,
like.
when he's getting his pockets lined by Gulf money, it doesn't really matter whether he gets awards or not. He did get an award at the end, so I think he won't be complaining. Sid, who have you gone for?
So, like you were talking about AC Milan, I've gone for Hansi Flick and Stefano Pioli. Like, what you were talking about AC Milan as a club?
You can only choose one. Who do you choose out of them?
I would go
One.
for Stefano Pioli, but then I think yeah, it's very harsh on Hansi Flick for me not to go for him. But I'll tell you why, because when you were talking about AC Milan and the way that they've managed this year, I do feel that more credit needs to be given to Stefano Pioli, because let's not forget, when we were doing a Serie A preview for the season, Ralph Ragnick was almost, it was a done deal that he was coming to AC Milan. And of course, we have the ball genius, Ivan Gazidis, who's running the club there right now. And I mean, you could see there was turmoil still. And even through all of that, Stefano Pioli is not a media manager in the sense, not like a Klopp or a Mourinho who will grab the headlines, but he goes around his business quietly in the training field. And let's not forget, Zlatan Ibrahimovic himself has come in. He's played under one of the greatest managers ever in Pep Guardiola, Jose Mourinho, to name a few. And he said, who is this Ralph Ragnick? He gave a stamp of approval to Stefano Pioli because he could see what he was trying to implement on the training ground and then convert it onto the pitch. And finally, it has come in terms of results. And I feel that finally, Ivan Gazidis, he grew a backbone and he backed him and he didn't bring in Ralph Ragnick, which might be his greatest footballing achievement ever, because you can see the results right now. Theo Hernandez has been fantastic. Some of the young players have been fantastic. Even without Ibrahimovic, they've been doing well. And like we said during the preview, I do hope they go and win on the Serie A title this season. And a lot of credit needs to be given to Stefano Pioli for the record that they've had this calendar year.
And Dibo, what about yourself?
I think I've gone for Gian Piero Gasperini. And okay, it's a early 2020, but I think, I mean, he's someone who's been around the scene for a long time. He's been around since Jose Mourinho was at Inter Milan, and I think he didn't have the best of times at Inter himself. And then I think with Atlanta, I think except for this season, they're languishing 6th or 7th in the Serie A right now. But I think in the last 2 seasons they were in the top 4, and the kind of football, again, I'm a sucker for underdog stories, if you can say so. But I think the kind of football that they have played was absolutely fantastic, and you know, the 3-4-1-2 formation that he also employs is something that is very new to everybody who watches football. I think it's a very exciting way of football that Atlanta had played, and a lot of people credit Thomas Tuchel to take PSG to the finals, but I don't think if the French league wouldn't have been suspended and PSG had played the same number of games that Atlanta played before they went on to play the quarterfinals in the Champions League, I don't think PSG would have gone on from that round. I don't think because Atlanta just looked way too tired in the second half when Thomas Tuchel just started throwing on players on strikers onto the pitch, and it was something that was bound to happen. But I think Gasperini needs to get that credit for taking a team that's financially so down the pecking order and to almost so close to being in the top two in the Serie A, because Juventus were fucking it up real bad in the last few. I think they could have sealed the league with 5 games to go, and they lost 2 back to back. Then they won one, they lost one, and they won the last one, taking the league to almost the second last day. And I think it was a very competitive league that year, Serie A, and Gasperini needs a lot of credit for what he has done with that team. And now with players like Papu Gomez, and if Papu Gomez today comes to the Premier League, everybody's gonna say he's over 30. He's someone who can't compete in the Premier League. So with players like him, with Zapata, I think he's done a fantastic job, and he needs to get that recognition.
Yeah, what's quite telling is that with Papu Gomez leaving Atlanta, which is very sad, by the way, it's a crazy story because he's been along the best of Atlanta's years in the recent past. It's quite telling that the buster between Gasperini and Papu Gomez has led to the club choosing to side with Gasperini, although Gasperini's come in. I mean, Papu Gomez has been at the club longer than Gasperini. He
handed in his resignation as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think Gasperini is one of those guys who you have to commend for the fact that he's had a lot of failures. At Inter specifically, his most high-profile failure. But he's come back with a revolutionary style that seems to be the future of football. You have centre-backs going and bombing forward, which is not seen, regularly around the world. So that's great to see. I've gone for Ralph Hasenhüttl, and I want you guys to talk about him a little bit because after the 9-1 last year to Leicester, I think he was odds on to get sacked. He himself admitted to the media that he was ready to get sacked. The Southampton board put a lot of trust in him, and look where they are today. Isn't that an unbelievable job, the turnaround he's done?
So I feel like the way that works is, I think you have to credit Arsenal for that. Where Arsenal
is there any way you can't credit Arsenal?
Hasenhüttl's career. So I think Stan Kroenke is the man to have saved Ralph Hasenhüttl. But I mean, I feel like jokes aside, what he's done with Southampton is absolutely amazing. Like they play football that suddenly I'm like, you know what? Like Southampton are a team that's gonna be hard to beat. Southampton play good football. I don't know. I don't know what it is and what he changed, but the difference between those, I think it was 9 games where they were playing super badly, and then he started playing really well after the Arsenal game, or like from the Arsenal game. I feel like the difference between that was night and day, and I honestly don't know what he changed, but I mean it definitely seems to be working.
He's back on the top tier of coaches. If in case a big club wants to appoint another coach, it seems like he's one of the front runners. Arsenal was linked to him when Arteta was under fire under the Kosh, but yeah, what a year he's had.
Why isn't he under the fire at the?
Because he delivered a great performance against Chelsea. That surely guarantees him in the seat for another 3 months.
But then, I mean, United fans can attest to that, right? Like, a manager needs at least a full season. Let's not forget, he only came in November ending, December starting. And then in between 4 months, of course, the pandemic came. He had COVID as well. So a lot of different things have taken place that he's had to juggle. And it's just been a year that he's been into the job. And you should judge him at the end of the season. Of course, you cannot excuse results if come Feb mid, he's languishing. If Arsenal, touchwood, hopefully they're not, but if they're languishing around 15, 16, then obviously serious questions need to be asked. But I think definitely he's deserved time at least until the end of the season to try and implement.
I said the same thing about Ronald Koeman. You didn't.
Yeah, and I'll explain why as well. Like we spoke about that, right? Ronald Koeman. What is his track record?
That is a can of worms right there. Don't open it.
Back to Ronald Koeman again.
Listen, Sid. Ronald Koeman's story is left behind that podcast. We don't want to speak about it again until he gets a sack, which is very soon. So we'll reserve it until then. Coming on to a more of casual topic to talk about, not something that's related to performance. I want you guys to tell me about who your cult hero of the year is. Now, I think this is a very broad field because you can choose whoever's been your hero this year or whoever's been one of those guys who you'll remember as one of them who the streets will never forget. So, Rick, who's that one guy for you?
My cult hero, I didn't answer this question. I want someone else to take it, and then I'll come back to me. Yeah.
Dodging it, you way.
Rick is no heroes, right?
Go for it. Dibo, I want to answer after that.
No, I think I've gone for Marcus Rashford because I think sport in general has been like a forum for players to to show their activism, to show their awareness over general things. But very few have gone on and made considerable change. And for somebody as young as Rashford to be influencing government policy is something that needs to be really something that's very commendable. And a very few, I mean, in that case, everybody shows their opinion, shows their solidarity on the pitch. But Rashford is one of those people who have really acted on it. You see the likes of Sterling and Lewis Hamilton working on issues of racism, and I think Rashford, in that sense, a cause that is very personal to him, and he has gone on and really made some considerable change in that field. So, which is why I think he's someone who's going to be remembered for his off the field, the impact that he has made in England. And it's something that inspires and should lead the way for other players to do the same, because they have the ability, they have the forum and the audience to to bring that change, and which is why I think Rashford is the cult hero for 2020.
Sid?
So, when I said it to you, I said Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting, right? Because, of course, this is a guy who
Stoke
went
hero.
from Stoke City relegation to PSG, and then he went to Bayern Munich, which is still laughable. I mean, for me as a cult hero, because I'm like, okay, if I ever do become a sports agent, I'm just like, okay, that's the guy. That's the sports agent I need to talk to, because I don't know what marketing he did. I don't know what salesmanship he did to get the guy to go into Bayern Munich. But then, again, coming back to that, I actually was thinking about this. I say Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting, but for me personally, I think it has to be Roman Abramovich. Roman Abramovich has single-handedly changed Chelsea Football Club. He is the most important figure in their football club, and you could arguably say he's up there with Arsene Wenger and Sir Alex Ferguson in terms of the impact that they've had in the Premier League. And I hate Chelsea as a football club. Like, I think they've hit the jackpot, the Chelsea fans, but I cannot help but admire Roman Abramovich for the way that he handles his football club, the amount of money that he puts into the football club. And he's not a silent owner, not an absentee owner like so many of the clubs in the Premier League have. He comes to games. Of course, he's had his visa issues right now with the UK, but he makes sure he's there at almost any Stamford Bridge game that's possible for him, of course, in his busy schedule. And I do think that he has to go down as the most important figure in Chelsea history as a football club. And I think the way that he has backed his club, especially during COVID crisis and the amount of money that they spent in the market. And let's not forget, he opened the Stamford Bridge Hotel to all the NHS employees, so that at free, of course. And I do think that he has revitalized. Of course, West London is, of course, one of the most posh areas in London, but he has revitalized the club, the community around the club, and credit to him. I admire the guy a lot.
It's crazy to think that he actually might not ever step again in London. That's quite a story if it does end up that way. But I do hope that he comes back, and we love seeing him in the stands celebrating a goal or whatever it is, or sacking a manager.
It's
I mean, the sacking culture was brought by him, right?
It's unbelievable to me that throughout these visa issues, he has stayed, backed the club regardless. Where it's just like he may never be able to come back to watch a game, but he still poured in so much money. I mean, extremely
passion.
Extremely
It's his passion.
admirable.
He loves pumping in money just to see success and probably see a smile on his face, back in Russia. I think for him, it's such a big passion.
To be fair, I mean, if I had the money he had, I mean, I would try to do the same. I feel like if I could just pump in as much money into my club as possible, I would. But I have to back Dibo. Thinking back on it, I have never felt so inspired by a player's off-field work as I have done with Marcus Rashford this year. And what's unbelievable to me is that he's so young and he has caused so much change already. right? It's the fact that he kind of forced strong armed the government into passing legislature that benefits millions of children around England, right? Is unbelievable to me. I think every accolade he has got this season has been like well deserved. Sports personality of the year, well deserved. I think it's just I feel like he has to be like in terms of as much as I agree with Sid. Roman is definitely a big part of Chelsea's success. But I feel like if you're thinking about a cult hero, I feel like Marcus Rashford's a great role model to have.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's true, and I'm sure this is just the start for Marcus Rashford as well in terms of his
Unbelievable season.
activist.
Yeah.
I think
Props to Marcus
I
Rashford.
think he can finish a lot better than he does, man. He could have had so many more goals, which is something. But anyway, yeah. Not to take away anything from his moment.
United fan being picky on Rashford, but not Ole.
But my cult hero is a bit of a weird one. I've gone for someone who doesn't really play the game but is so influential in the way the game is played. And I've gone for the super agent George Mendes. I can't even get his first name right. Is it George or George?
Jorge.
Or what is it? Jorge?
Jorge, they say, no?
Jorge Mendes.
Anyways, whatever.
George, okay, it is George then. So George Mendes is my cult hero of the year, and I'll tell you why. His business in the pandemic, where he's moved, we talk about 5D chess, right, in memes, and we've seen it a lot of times. He really has played 5D chess, and I'll tell you why. When Barcelona, Wolves, and Tottenham required a certain player at right back, or on the right wing, George Mendes decided that he would move the pieces around and make it to suit not just him, but also the club. So what he did was, he has good close ties with obviously Portugal, Wolves, and more recently Barcelona, and of course Jose Mourinho, who he represents. So when Barcelona required to raise some funds, he decided that, maybe we could sell on Nelson Semedo, the right back, because we all remember how he got humiliated by Alphonso Davies in that semi-final. And subsequently, Spurs wanted a right back because Serge Aurier was just not good enough, and he's still not good enough. Just put in a bit of a good patch of form, but they went for Matt Doherty, who was also represented by one of George Mendes' clients, I think. It was Fosun, who own Wolves. So Matt Doherty went to Spurs. Wolves needed a right back. They got Nelson Semedo. Barcelona got some funds. Subsequently, they went on and signed Francisco Trincao from Benfica, who's another guy who's represented by Mendes. Then Man City came calling. They wanted a centre-back. He had Ruben Diaz on his payroll, gave them Ruben Diaz. Wolves wanted a bit of money to kind of fund Semedo's deal. So he got Jota to leave and join Liverpool. Like, this is crazy thinking about a pandemic where people are saying there's no money for clubs to spend. And here's Jorge Mendes creating his own demand and supply. It's unbelievable. And us as students of economics, like we probably like to say, how insane is this?
I actually never thought about it like that.
He's a genius.
That's unbelievable.
And also the fact that he goes about his business, we were talking about it, he goes about his business so quietly. You never hear about his name that much except for when he's
Mino
saying,
Raiola.
okay, Jorge Mendes has facilitated this deal. But then Mino Raiola, of course, he's a different kind of agent. But then, like you said, Jorge Mendes, the way he goes about his business and the impact that he has on football, European
he facilitated
football.
the Bruno deal, right? He represents,
Yeah, the Bruno deal as well.
And also the Nicolas Pepe deal.
extremely influential.
The Nicolas Pepe deal, he got Lille to agree to the payment structure of over 5 years for Arsenal because, of course, we can't, afford 72 million upfront. So, yeah, he's got his hands in a lot of different wells, you could say right now.
Oh, by the way, I think there's another one that I missed out. I think he removed the transfer fee out of the James Rodriguez transfer to Everton. He made sure that Real Madrid gave up on that bargain. Yeah, I mean, he's made the Premier League a richer league by creating his
That's
own
a
demand
good shout.
supply. It's crazy
That's
to
a
think.
good
And
shout.
for me, that's why I chose him as my cult hero of the year, although it might not be the most conventional choice.
He has a partnership with Fosun International.
He can't own directly, but he has the Gestifuti agency, which he started, and of course, is one of the biggest agencies in world football. Probably has a stronghold on Portuguese talents, which is why you see, clubs like Olympiacos and Wolves just, directly involving their, business with them. So yeah, I think his business is so well set that he doesn't even have to come out and be like Mino Raiola and start talking in the public eye. he can just do his business in the sidelines and rake in the money and also make good things happen for each league and each team. So great to see. Moving on then to the disappointment of the year. What has disappointed you guys the most, Sid?
I mean, there's been a lot of disappointments this year, and
not Arsenal. Please don't talk about
it has
Arsenal.
to be Arsenal, but yeah, maybe this one I pass it on. I think it has to be Gareth Bale. I was quite shocked when he moved to Spurs, and when he did move to Spurs, I was like, okay, that's not great. They have an extremely potent front line with Bale, Son, Kane. You have Lucas Moura, and of course Steven Bergwijn as well coming in. And I think he has to go down as a big disappointment. Tottenham have been playing well. I think they've been playing better than what people have expected. Of course, they went on that run of form where people were actually talking about them challenging Liverpool for the title, but I think that's a bit premature. And I don't think they'll challenge Liverpool for the title. I do think they'll make the top four at this rate, but no one's talking about Gareth Bale. No one's even mentioned the fact that he's not scored a goal in the league yet, and he's not punching above his weight. He's not pulling up any trees. And yeah, I do think he's been the big disappointment this year in terms of a player.
So for me, I wrote about Arsenal, but since Shreyas doesn't want us to talk about Arsenal, I'll go another way. I think Chris Wilder, from where it was so weird to see, because Sheffield did so well last season, and then to see what's happened this season, where they have 2 points, I think, in 15 games. It's unbelievable to me that they fell so low, and I feel like it's crazy because he was up for Premier League Manager of the Year last season, and it's just extremely disappointing to see that they've fallen down.
There was even
so
a phase
much
where they were
season.
one of the favourites again in the Champions League this season.
Yeah, but I don't know what happened.
Maybe teams
but
have found them out.
I feel
Maybe
like that's a
teams
huge
have found out the way that they've been playing with the overlapping centre backs and the fact that they don't have much quality in the middle of the park. Okay, Sander Berge I think is going to be a fantastic player in the future, but other than that, I mean, look at the front pairing of Ollie McBurney and McGoldrick, and it's not fair on Liam Brewster to carry the weight of Sheffield United in terms of the burden of goals.
I think while that's true, I feel like to drop from coming, what did they come, 7th last season, to coming to having 2 points in 15 games and being last in the Premier League, I feel like that's a huge step down, regardless of the quality you have. And I feel like...
Yeah, I think that's a good shout for the biggest disappointment. Yeah, I have to agree with you.
I also had Nicolas Pepe down. I'm just letting you guys know. But we can keep going.
Yeah, I think the biggest disappointment this year has been VAR and referees.
That's a great shout.
Because with all the money that's gone into the technology and everything, it just made more confusion than bringing more clarity into the game. I think decisions that were already contentious are more contentious now, and referees with the new rules, with the handball rule, it just players don't know what to play with. They don't know what the rule is. So I think it's just created a chaos, and especially I think VR has been implemented better in the Champions League than in England, because it's absolutely chaotic how VR has been used.
Why do you think that is? Is that because of the laws, or is that because of just the fact that you have non-English referees?
So the thing is, I feel it's because what VAR is trying to do, and I think to emphasize something, I think the penalty that Lacazette got in the match against Chelsea, right? He wasn't tripped at all, and I think the referee in the football show said that VAR can only overturn a clear and obvious error, and for some reason the VAR thought that the fact that Kieran Tierney didn't get tripped at all is not a clear and obvious error, is something that makes referees themselves, it's you are either siding with the referee or you're siding with the law which is being followed.
Yeah, I think that's a clear and obvious winner for disappointment of the year, for sure. I don't think there's anything coming near that. But I've gone for some team that has been an absolute shambles this year, 2020, and that's Schalke, who are 29 games in a row without a win. Of course, they were managed at the start of the year by David Wagner, the former Huddersfield manager, a good friend of Jurgen Klopp, who could not replicate any of his success at his former clubs. But I mean, to see Schalke, one of the so-called bigger teams in Germany, go down a path where they're almost destined for relegation is quite sad. And the fact that we all remember that lockdown game against Dortmund, and it's gone downwards from that point since. And I think for Schalke, big changes need to be made or a miracle really, if they're to stay up in the Bundesliga. Moving on then to your player of the year. And I think there aren't that many contenders if you think about it. But who have you gone for, Dibo?
I know why you've gone with me first, but I've gone for Bruno. I've gone for Bruno.
He's a multiple title winner this year, Bruno Fernandes.
I think he's a multiple impact maker of the year, Bruno Fernandes. But just for the only factor that when he's come into a club that looked devoid of let's say energy, devoid of a flair, and he's brought all that back into the club and a sense of leadership that wasn't there, and that still isn't there in the captain right now. But he's come in and he's brought in all of that as single-handedly, and his contributions up until now, you can't question the fact that Bruno has not been one of the best players in the Premier League along with KDB.
But player of the year, surely you're getting a little bit carried away. Are you not considering the GOATs, the Messis, the Ronaldos, the Lewandowskis?
No, I'm not considering the Lewandowskis and the Ronaldos because I think that's what's expected of players of that standard. I don't think Bruno. You don't take Bruno's name in the same sentence as Ronaldo and Messi yet. But I think that's why I picked Bruno, because I think he's somewhat of an outlier. Anybody coming into the Premier League, you don't see them taking to the league as quickly as Bruno has, and the impact that he has had. So just for that factor, and I think Bruno's impact has not been matched with anyone else in the league, and in and around Europe for that matter, which is why Bruno is my player of the year.
Rick, agree to disagree?
Did any of you? No, just give me a second. Did any of you hear him say yet? He's
Yeah,
not on that
I
level
was
yet.
I was waiting for.
Dibo, to be
I was
fair,
just
you
waiting
said,
for
you said
Dibo-
that Bruno's cannot be spoken the same sentence as the others. We're talking about player of the year here, not player in the second division of players of the year. So I mean,
I'm saying Bruno is the player of the year because of the impact he's made. You don't expect you always expect Ronaldo or Messi to have like 30 plus goals
No,
a
but
season.
Dibo, I agree with
But
you
they're
on
still
that part.
players.
Like I do
Like-
feel like I can't help but agree. I think Bruno Fernandes has made such a big impact on Manchester United. I think he has dug Ole out of a big hole. But if you're talking about player of the year, I mean, I don't think you can look past Lewandowski. I'll tell you why. And you were also saying that you expect that from Ronaldo and Messi. But I think that's the problem, right? We don't appreciate the fact that they do it year in, year out. And Lewandowski's also been doing it year in, year out. And I do think that credit needs to be given to Lewandowski. I mean, 55 goals last season. And he's already hit 18 or 20 this season. I mean, these are numbers that you can expect. Like you say, we expect Messi and Ronaldo to give these numbers. But credit still needs to be given to them that they do this. And Lewandowski doing this during a season where they won the treble. I mean, yeah, for me personally, I think it's Lewandowski.
I feel like exactly what Sid said, right? You talk about not giving players due credit and you expecting these from players. Lewandowski for the last 5 years has not been given due credit. And after last season, you cannot deny but give him like props for everything he did. Right? And it was just, he was so instrumental in them winning the treble that it is hard for me to look past him being the player of the year. Because he just was, in terms of how many goals he contributed to that squad, that was already looked so good.
I do agree with you in the terms of the impact on a club. I think in the Premier League, I don't think anyone has had the impact Bruno has had this calendar year on any team. But let's not forget, he's also 26. It's not like he's a youngster. And he's come into a league where maybe everything is aligned for him in terms of the club and the way that they are also in a crisis, identity crisis, and he's had the chance to take it by the scruff of the neck. And of course, Ole has given him.
Just like the impact Alexis Sanchez had.
Yeah, like certain players just come and everything just sticks for them, and then everything goes about, like, of course, 30 goal contributions, goals and assists in 28 Premier League games. That's unbelievable. A phenomenal record. But this year, let's not forget, they've not won anything. United are the first team in the Premier League to lose 3 semi-finals in 1 year. I mean, I just had to get that in there, but 3 semi-finals in 1 year. Bruno didn't have an impact in any of those three semi-finals. Whereas Lewandowski has consistently done it. He has dragged them to the Bundesliga title this season, and they look like under Niko Kovac, especially when he got sacked, they might not win it. And of course, they went and won the Champions League final at the end. I do think that you can't look past Lewandowski, in my opinion, for this year, especially as Player of the Year.
Yeah, I agree with Rick and Sid there. I think Lewandowski is untouchable, and it's a shame that the Ballon d'Or was cancelled for this year. Although
Yeah.
they have the FIFA Men's Player of the Year, it doesn't really catch the same breath as the Ballon d'Or. I think had he won the Ballon d'Or, there would have been a true respect put on his name, and he would have been kind of an immortal player in many people's eyes. But yeah, I think.
Do you
his
think that was a
season-
political agenda? The fact that they cancelled it?
Probably. I think it's fair to say that Lewandowski is not the the universal favorite like Messi or Ronaldo are, and I'm pretty sure if push came to shove, they would have probably picked one of them if they had the award this year. But I mean, his numbers speak for themselves, and the fact that he dug Bayern out of a hole under Niko Kovac to, kind of spearhead an attack that was flanked by two youngsters, Kingsley Coman coming after injury, and Serge Gnabry, an Arsenal great, on the other wing. I mean, he was their fodder. Anything that came to him, any scraps, he was there to finish it. It was just wonderful to watch, and he carried them. He carried them to the Bundesliga. He carried them to the Champions League. 100% deserves it. Doesn't deserve it for his TikToks, by the way. Don't watch them.
Yeah, oh my god.
But yeah, sensational season. Another award that I think needs to be a little bit of a narrow choice here is the League of the Year. I'm sure some of them have been Farmers Leagues has been going around, but what do you guys think is the League of the Year, Rick?
So I mentioned that I think the two that I was talking about was the Bundesliga and the Liga. And the reason I talk about that is because of their performances in the Champions League. I think both leagues had significant, two teams that kind of went up right up until the end, fought hard. The reason I would say the Bundesliga over the Liga is because Bayern Munich eventually went on to win the Champions
And
League.
Leipzig made the semis as well. Let's not forget
I
that.
remember the tweet. Yeah, Leipzig, exactly. That's what I mean. Leipzig made the semis. So, and that's why I put Ligue 1 in there, is because there was Lyon and PSG that made the semis and then the finals. And let's not forget, Lyon had put in a fantastic performance in the semi-final. And it seemed so fitting that Mbappe would post that tweet, would tweet saying the Premier League is the Farmers League. I mean, I'm obviously paraphrasing, but that's essentially what he said. But I feel like those two leagues definitely have to be up there, and the Bundesliga, I think, takes it for me because Bayern Munich eventually went on to win.
Yes, Sid, I have to note there. He mentioned League 1, so I think people should listen to the Farmers Harvest, the first
for
ever
sure.
episode on Tet to Tet. It's quite hilarious, to be honest, right on the back of the League 1 season. But who have you gone for, Sid?
For me, I think there's just one winner, and that has to be the Serie A League. And I think the way that the Serie A League standing has kind of shaped up right now, with Milan, of course, leading the pack, with Inter Milan right behind them. And I think this is a season where Juventus's dominance over the league is going to come to an end. We spoke about it. We thought that Milan should, hopefully, we hope that they would win it. But now it's becoming a reality that they might actually go and win the whole thing. And let's not forget that teams like Napoli, Roma, Atlanta, like Dibo was saying, the way that they've been playing football over the last 2.5 years under Gasperini, it's been phenomenal. It's been like the hipster's choice for a team to kind of support, like say a Borussia Dortmund, who people want to watch because as a neutral, you want to watch these teams with young flair players, especially like Papu Gomez, who's kind of having a renaissance at the latter stages of his career. It's fantastic to see, and like we've spoken about Juventus' domination over the last decade in Serie A, and it was kind of becoming boring, to be fair. But there's been some investment in the league. Roma, Inter Milan have been pumping in money. Napoli, they've always been in and around because of the recruitment, especially in terms of the young players that they've gotten and kind of developed. And of course, Lazio, who I felt like have been a little bit of a disappointment this 2020-21 season. But under their fantastic manager, Inzaghi, I think they're going to do well again. And there are around 6-7 teams that you can say that are kind of competing at the top. And of course, the cream will be right now both the Milan teams and Juventus. But it's definitely been an exciting league to watch, and especially the renaissance of AC Milan as a club has been fantastic to watch. And I do think that Syria is kind of moving forward in the right direction, and it's going to be a very interesting league to watch maybe for the next 2-3 years right now.
Yeah, for us at least, from people watching in India or probably outside Italy, I'd say the Syria's broadcast or the appeal of the Syria has been very very low, right, in the last decade, simply because the quality hasn't been good. And the fact that have 6 or 7 teams at equal pegging, and you probably have the Milan clubs getting back to where they were, maybe 15 years ago, is just fascinating. These teams, if you just go through, and I think Sid and I can appreciate this because we did the research on the Syria preview podcast, where we went through the history of some of these teams, Napoli, AC Milan, Inter Milan, the rock and rolls of the 80s and 90s surrounding Italy, especially when Maradona was playing and such. And the league just has so much history and so much tradition that it's a shame that it's been in the dumps for the past decade or so. And the fact that it's now getting back to a level where you can actually say, teams from Syria are playing well in Europe, and the league is a bit more competitive because right now Juventus don't seem to be winning the league by a canter. It's just so exciting, and for that reason alone, it has to be one of the best leagues that has been the part of 2020. I think the transformation in the league, the transformation in the quality of players that have graced the league is very, very much there for people to see. And Dibo, you've also gone for the Syria as your pick for your League of the Year. Why is that so from your point of view?
I think for all the reasons that Sid mentioned, and I think one more team that he didn't mention is Sassuolo, who look
Yes.
very good on
B-Tech Atalanta.
Absolutely, yeah, they look like a budget Atlanta for that matter. And
Budget on budget.
Wait, you can't call it budget Atlanta because Atlanta are the budget of any
It's a
other
budget
team
on
in the
budget.
yeah, but again, the resurgence of the two Milan clubs and the fact that Inter and AC Milan, both of them look extremely extremely dominant this season. Just 1 point divide, between the two. And yes, I think also facilitated by how Juventus have not performed up to their potential, but it makes the league extremely exciting to watch. And something that I don't agree with Rick is you can't as a league, the fact that you're calling it a best league, and I think leagues should be judged on their performance as a league as a whole, not the club performances in Europe, because the Bundesliga, I mean, Bayern Munich did win it by 13 points. There was no competition at all for Bayern Munich in the domestic league, so which makes Bundesliga not an interesting watch at all. Which
No, but the
would
football-
agree
but the
with
football
that
in
sentiment, but we
Bundesliga-
also do mention that, like, we keep talking about how the Premier League is the most competitive league, and Liverpool won that by a country mile. So I mean,
That's
the
true.
idea
yeah,
is
which is why Premier League is none of our choice right now, because there is a clear and
But then the competition in the Premier League is also totally different, and the way that the teams play in Bundesliga, like most of the teams employ a high press tactic where that's actually quite exciting to watch, and I understand why they goes for that choice. But for me, it's Serie A because of the competition. But you also want to watch good football. You also want to watch interesting football, especially if, as a league, you're going to be playing teams in and around, obviously within the country that you're playing, and you kind of judge yourself when you're playing, especially in derbies and in teams that are within the same region or the adjacent region or whatever. And when you look at that, the Bundesliga, if you look at the middle, like I would say the midfield part of the table, it's quite competitive, and it's not like teams are sitting back and teams are kind of employing, say, the Jose Mourinho tactic of sitting back and hitting on the counter, where that is a much easier tactic to kind of coach your team in order to employ during the games. Whereas the high press, the gegenpressing school is much more difficult to implement. But then a lot of teams are devoted to that and try and implement that. And a lot of talents are flourishing in Bundesliga. They give so much opportunity to a lot of the youngsters. A lot of the youngsters from England who are not getting chances are now migrating to Germany, where they see the kind of coaching that's going on there. It kind of improves their all-round game and the game awareness that they have. So I think Bundesliga is a good shot. I think
and also what I like now about the Bundesliga is this Bayern Munich is kind of being challenged by the RB Leipzig, like their policies and how they have kind of come in to the spotlight, being like this club that is kind of super controversial, and I feel like it kind of takes away from Bayern Munich's eternal dominance and them being able to just buy out the league. I feel it has become a lot more competitive in that sense, where you have like teams that are actively going at Bayern Munich now, even though of course there is a skill gap that is obviously there, but I feel like it is an exciting league with some teams that play some very exciting football.
I just want to say this about Bayern Munich. Like, people say that they kind of buy out the league and everything, but I think they need to get credit for their recruitment, because a lot of their recruitment has been done on the cheap. Alphonso Davies, Robert Lewandowski, who went for a free, has to arguably go down as one of the greatest free transfers of all time. And let's not forget their record signing, I think, is Lucas Hernandez, if I'm not wrong, at 72 million. And a lot of their buys have been very astute buys, and you have to give credit to them. It's not like other teams couldn't afford to do these buys. They went out and they made sure that they went and got these players. Even Leon Goretzka has come on for a free transfer, if I'm not wrong, from Schalke. So it's not like Juventus, because Juventus have made their mistakes in the transfer market, but yet they've still been dominant because they've been relying on key players. And of course, the teams in and around them have also not been performing well, and also in the market. Whereas Bayern Munich have just been consistent in terms of their recruitment, in terms of the philosophy that they have. They have a clear structure behind the scenes in terms of what the hierarchy is, and what is the kind of culture and the style of football that's going to be employed throughout the various youth levels. And as much as I don't like to see the dominance of Bayern Munich, I want to see a Leipzig or say I want to see Dortmund win the title soon enough. But credit needs to be given to them because they've been extremely consistent in order to stay at the top.
So we spoke about the heart-wrenching moment against Atletico Madrid that Liverpool faced, and honestly, that was probably the low point that Liverpool have faced in this whole year. And I was just bemused that a defensive midfielder called Marcos Llorente turned into prime R9 that day, and has since, actually, it's crazy to think that since that day, Marcos Llorente has turned into a fantastic scoring machine for Atletico Madrid, leading their title charge this season. But I want to ask you guys about an event that brought you tears of joy or sadness this year, because there have been a lot of emotions. Obviously, we had football back after an unprecedented hiatus, and we also had many moments that remind us that football is the best game on the planet. So, starting with Dibo, what is the moment that brought you tears of joy or sadness, whichever emotion you felt?
I think that exact thing that you mentioned, the fact that there was an uncertainty about when football would restart, and if it would restart, would all the leagues be cancelled, what would happen? And I think that's the uncertainty that everybody was suffering from. And the fact that when it did restart, the project restart from the Premier League and the other league restarted, we had a sort of a football bonanza, if you can call it, because we had the Champions League every day for all the since the round of 16 quarters, semi-finals were back to back, and it was as if it was the best time to be a football fan, because every day you would watch quality football matches. And I think that was one event, or let's say a few days, which made it seem like the best time to be a football fan for me.
I feel like that's I agree with everything they both said, but I feel like in terms of the best, like a moment that made me cry or like cry out of sadness or joy was, I felt like I was the happiest I've been as a football fan the day we won the FA Cup against Chelsea. Losing to Chelsea in the Europa League was a like, and in that fashion, just losing to them in the Europa League final was something that caused me immense pain and caused me to be the end of a lot of banter, which kind of hurt my feelings. And so, like, there was animosity there to begin with. And I feel like winning that game was not only winning the FA Cup, but was beating Chelsea finally in a final. I mean, we'd done it in the FA Cup before, but
it felt more significant this win, right?
After the terrible year, and it was a juxtaposition of how poor we were in the league that entire year, and then to go on and finish off one of the worst leagues, league season, like one of the worst seasons we've had in our recent history, only to be topped off by this year, but that's a different question. To kind of finish that off with winning the FA Cup and then going on to winning the Community Shield, I felt like was my high, football high.
It's related to them, but not in the same way, because of course, that FA Cup, I think it had a lot of significance around it when we did win, because of course we all know what's been happening with Arsenal over the last 2 years, especially after Wenger left. But as a football fan, and especially as an Arsenal fan, I remember the Europa League game, Rapid Vienna. We were the first team to welcome back fans into the stadium. And I was like, okay, what is it going to be like? Because I've never been to a game in UK, especially at the Arsenal stadium, and I've never gone to the stadiums to watch the games. But
Do you want to though with their current home record?
I mean, I do have my Kroenke out banner with me, so yeah, for sure. But when like you've not been there, you've not watched it, but then as long as I've been watching football, you've always seen fans in the stadiums. You've always heard them through the camera, through the TV, and you've seen the passion that the fans have in their face when they see the fans while they're celebrating and everything. And just kind of felt hollow when the games are going on without no fans back in the stadium. During the warm up, there's a time where all the players went to the 2,000 fans there and they were clapping with them, and the fans got up and they were clapping and they were shouting their names and everything. And I don't know, it just kind of resonated with me a lot, because I think that's when you realize how big of a miss fans are. Because I think we can agree on this part, all of us. Fans are the bread and butter of football. They are the most important part of football. And for them to finally be back, and some of these fans have been watching Arsenal home games for almost 40, 50 years and not missed a single game. So for them also must have been a big void, that 7 months that they've not gone and watched their beloved football club play, like, personally go to the stadium and watch them and support them. And I don't know why, it resonated with me a lot. And when it comes to, of course, tears of sadness, it has to be the 55 redundancies made by Arsenal as a football club, because we've always prided ourselves in being a club that runs differently from other clubs. We have the class, the heritage, and we've always run as a good part of the community that the club is situated in. And I just think that Stan Kroenke, especially after he's taken over and they've gone into being private, they've kind of taken that, like, a little bit of the soul out of the club, and it's been really sad to see. And I think it came, like, full on, especially when the 55 redundancies were made so publicly. And yeah, I do think that was really a low point. And it just got to show that even football also got affected.
Yeah, I think for me, I think it's a very predictable one. What brought me tears, after such a long wait. And, it's kind of funny when you think back, past decade and whatnot, and 2010s, 2011s, the banter era of Liverpool, truly, under Roy Hodgson. And yeah, it's crazy to think that when you come from being a mid-table club at the start of the decade to being Premier League winners, it's crazy. And I think the moment where, Jurgen Klopp came on television after that Man City Chelsea game, and they broadcasted scenes from that. They had, I think the players had got together at some kind of a resort to celebrate and watch the game together, and then of course celebrate after. And the way these guys were talking about it, they were literally shaking when they were speaking about what this success meant to them. And I think that's where it got a bit teary. And then Liverpool posted a video with, I think, anytime You'll Never Walk Alone plays, I feel like I have some butterflies in the stomach. But I think that specific video where they said, Liverpool Premier League champions, was kind of crazy. And I think maybe 5 years ago, if Liverpool had won, that 13-14 season, I'd have probably gone on and tell everyone that I knew, especially United fans, because, they're always there everywhere. Just go and hurl abuse at them. But then I felt like this was such a, a gratifying moment that just felt so good. And yeah, probably the best moment.
You didn't have to tell anything to any fan. They just knew that Liverpool deserved it. Like, I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And as a fan, I think that's why when we spoke on the Arsenal decline episode, that's why I said, like, for Arsenal fans or any fans of any club that's going to a decline,
we have hope,
there's always an upside at some point. I'm pretty sure when that upside comes, as a fan, you will feel that emotion of, we went through the worst of the worst and now we're at the best of the best. So that's one of the best things about football, really, that it gives you perspective on things. PR. A lot of clubs employ big PR agencies or have people that put out these statements that mean something just to protect their images. Sid and I have spoken about the same thing over and over and over again, but we leave ours till last. I want to start off with you, Rick. What has been your PR masterclass of the year?
So I have a few. I have a PR master. Okay, and my PR master is Mesut Ozil. I think his PR game is phenomenal. The work he does on Twitter and like Instagram and stuff is insane, right? And he gets like people to rally behind him so hard because of everything he does on Twitter and on Instagram and on social media essentially, that it's very hard to think of anyone else who has that kind of social media pull. I think he has more followers on Twitter, by the way, than Arsenal do.
Most teams.
And that's extremely
He has,
telling, I think.
he has followers more than most teams in the Premier League.
But the idea was that
He has the whole of Turkey following him
yeah,
as well.
and
You can't discount
I think
that.
the biggest masterclass. I have two. One was when he said he would pay for Gunnosaurus's salary to make sure he would stay at the club. I think that was a big PR moment. And I think the other one was when he said, not when he said, when he was hosting these match day predictions of how Arsenal would do against other teams. I feel like that was a PR masterclass.
I mean, would any other footballer get away with that? Would any other footballer get away with making predictions like these about the club that he's playing at, the club that employs him? I mean, it's ridiculous.
I suppose his links to the Turkish president, Mr. Erdogan, certainly he's learned a few tricks from the best man of PR himself, I think. Fair to say. Dibo, what about you? What have you seen as a PR masterclass this season?
I don't think after the discussion, I think I can match up to something like that.
Unbelievable. Well, guys, don't you think the Leo Messi interview with Goal.com that came around September, having gone through the 3 months since that interview, and his latest interview with La Sexta, which came out, I think, day before yesterday, where he talks about how he wants to stay at Barcelona, the whole process seems to me like he just wanted Bartomeu to get out of the door. He's waiting for the new president to come in and just wants a way in which the president is going to go, the new president, of course, who's going to be elected, I think, the next month or so, is going to go up to Leo Messi and say, I'll do whatever you need for you to stay here. And Leo Messi said in that interview that he wants to stay at Barcelona and eventually he wants to play in the MLS or whatever, but it looks like he's set on staying. Isn't that the biggest PR masterclass? Sending a burofax, saying that he could have won the case in court. I mean, if he really wanted to, he should have gone. I mean, it doesn't make sense. If he was desperate to leave, he should have done it, but he didn't because he knew that, he would get Bartomeu out of the door. So what do you guys think of that whole PR situation?
I mean, it's interesting as well that certain Barcelona fans are also kind of getting upset with the way that he's been handling himself on the pitch, the clear lack of effort in certain games, and the way he's gone about conducting his business. Of course, I think as a player, you want to maximize your full potential. And I think it's a disgrace that he's not won the Champions League since the 2014-15 season, if I'm not wrong. A player of his caliber, who might arguably go down as the greatest player of all time. But, I mean, I do agree. That's a PR masterclass from his perspective. But I think it's damaged the club as well a lot.
I think the club was damaged anyway.
Do you think it's damaged the club more than the club was already damaged?
No.
Exactly.
No.
That was just what I was going to say. I think
I think that's what has happened, because Messi has kind of, for his own sake, he has damaged Barcelona's image more than it could have been, because right now what he has done is, okay, now I might be wrong, but there are more Messi fans than there are more Barcelona fans at this point.
Yeah.
Right? So, I think Messi has rallied his fans to be against Bartomeu ever since he started that protest. And people were already against him. And I think this... No, but because he's just kind of victimized himself to get him out of the club, and then stood by his word.
No, but the idea is that Bartomeu should have been out regardless.
I mean, that he was the president, and it had to be that push, right? So Leo Messi had to make that push, and we all know that Messi is not the most outspoken guy in the world. He's one of those shrewd guys, doesn't talk too much in the public eye. So for him to come out and give out that interview that was, they said world exclusive on Goal.com, whatever it is, I'm sure he's paid a hefty sum for it. But for him to come out and give an interview of that length, with his, past, with his character, really, it says a lot about what he thought of a power move, really, to get Bartomeu out. Because at that point, it seemed like after the 8-2, especially, and after the burofax, there could be nothing done to save his future at Barcelona. I mean, if he'd left, it would have been a bit of a dampener on his legacy at Barcelona. They wouldn't have looked at him the same way. But now that he's victimized himself, you're almost sympathizing with him. You're saying, yeah, now he's not playing well because the club isn't allowing him to play well.
Yeah, but then would you not sympathize with him regardless? The fact that he's had to put up with the absolutely ridiculous decisions that Bartomeu and the board have made over the last... over the last couple
100%.
of
As
years.
a
As
as a as a
someone
player, I
who
couldn't
we
agree
know
more with
has
you.
that much love for the club, that has kind of brought him up, helped him be the player that he is today, right? To see your club enter into a phase of existence where it's just like an AC Milan kind of drop off, where essentially you can't see a way back for a club that has made so many bad decisions and have been playing so badly. They've bought overpriced players that are just not good enough, and then haven't improved their core parts of their team, like their defense and their midfield. Getting rid of or 20.
But that does not justify a player holding the club
But
at
that was
ransom.
not holding the club at ransom. The idea was that
It kind of was, but I think that just boils down to his personal choice, right? It boils down to two choices. Here, you can take the L that you're going to have with Bartomeu as a president, and you're going to go through that period of transition where the new president's going to come on and the project is going to start, and maybe take 2 years' time where he might be, 36 in 2022 or 2023, where he's obviously going to be at the end of his career. Or you can actually, as a player, where you want to maximize your
correct.
potential
I think
and his
I think
God-given
this
potential.
idea that Messi was holding the club at ransom is something that I'm super against, because everyone talks about Messi and everyone's like, okay, Messi is an employee, right? Like Messi shouldn't be doing this, Messi shouldn't be doing that. But Bartomeu literally ran that club into the ground. There has to be some accountability. And if there isn't someone, if you have Messi in your team, who is arguably the greatest of all time, you have a player that has enough experience with multiple boards to know that this is just not working. He knows what good management is. He's lived through it. He's lived through the golden era. He's played through teams that are phenomenal, and he knows that this just isn't it. And to say that this player should not speak out because it is him holding the club at ransom, I think is unfair, because Bartomeu is not the club. Bartomeu is a president who has definitely done more harm than he has done good. And so I feel like he was completely entitled to do what he did.
And we're talking the duos that have lit up the year. We've seen a lot of duos. We've seen the Rashfords and Bruno Fernandes. We've seen Lautaro Lukaku. We've seen recently Kane and Son. Dibo, who's caught your attention the most out of these? Not strike duos. It could be any duos. What's been the best duo for you?
I think very out of my allegiance to United, I've gone for Salah and Mane because of the
They're
consist.
not good friends.
But yeah, they're not. But again, I think the consistency on both the flanks by both the players is what really has impressed me for so long. And I mean, very different players in the sense. I mean, Mane is a much more direct, very it's a very direct player with his skill set than Salah, who's more of a goal scorer for me. But again, I think they've worked out really well with how Firmino plays in the middle, which is why I think and playing for, and people would have called them, let's say, called them a fluke for the first good season they had, but I think they've consistently kept it up. And even up till now, which is why I think they're one of the best duos of this year and the year that was before this. So Salah and Mane for me.
I have a weird one, which is a little
Chris
bit
Woods,
more
Ashley Barnes.
out there. No, not that. That's like Martinelli, Saka. Like no, I have DCL and James, like James Rodriguez.
But
hasn't that been something that only performed for
Fell-
like 2 or 3
yeah,
games?
true.
It's been
But I feel
a bit
like
of a...
so I okay. So I'll tell you why I've said DCL and James Rodriguez. I do think Son and Kane have been immense this year, but I just cannot bring myself to say that. So
Fair
Dominic
enough.
Calvert-Lewin and James, I feel like whenever I've seen them play together, I think they move so smoothly. Dominic Calvert-Lewin has had a phenomenal season this season. And as soon as James is back, I think they're a real threat for any team. I think they're so hard to deal with just because of the attributes they have. Just as Kane and Son are, because of the attributes they possess. The fact that Kane can drop in deep and then kind of make those passes to Son that will run into like a ball that's coming in, like a through ball. I feel like Dominic Calvert-Lewin and James just have had phenomenal games this season, and that's why I went with them.
For me, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it has to be Kane and Son. I mean, Kane and Son are Tottenham right now. The way that they've been playing with each other, not just this last calendar year, but then since he joined, I think in 2015, Heung-min Son and Kane was just coming into his prime. I think they've been phenomenal with each other. They understand each other's games perfectly. They know when to time their runs. Kane drops in, like Rick says, and he puts the ball through to Son, which is a very, like, how we've just summed it up. But then they bring a lot of things, a lot of other things as well. And let's not forget that they have the most number of goal contributions with each other. I think they're the second highest in the Premier League history right now. And I think they need to go down as maybe in the top 3 duos the Premier League has ever seen, because it's just been absolutely phenomenal for Tottenham over the last 5-6 years. And
I don't
they've
agree with
been
that at all. I have a problem.
Huh?
Also I have a problem with people being one of the best duos of all time, not
That's
having
what.
won
That's what. I would have gone for the best duo
I-
ever if they had won. And I can't believe I brought myself to say this, but if you look at the way that they play, they are Tottenham right now. They are keeping Jose Mourinho on a job. I still don't. And when they said that Tottenham were title challengers, I didn't believe, because Jose will not get them the title. But Kane and Son are keeping them relevant right now. And I think Kane especially, I have been a big critic of him. We both know during college, like, yeah, I just didn't get myself to come and say that he's a great player, but he's a phenomenal player. And Son, I think, is phenomenal as well. And I think both of them together, they're arguably the top 5 players in the league.
But I think Jose is kind of, you know,
Maximized it.
He's not maximizing Kane at all. For me, because yes, he has got extremely good passing attributes, but if your top striker's so away from the goal, you're not maximizing your output at all. And in the most recent game, they're so deep inside their own half, and with the fact that just one goal is not enough, and they're so deep inside his own half that I don't even think even if Kane gets the ball to play a Son through or a Lucas Moura through, they're just not going to make the most of it, because now you're inside. Now they're the only people inside the opposition half against the whole defense line, and I don't think that's just the probability of that to be very successful is extremely low. I think they'll get 1 goal, 2 goals each game, but as a team, they're going to suffer.
I agree that he's not
I-
maximizing them, but I think as a duo,
No, but I also think, while I agree that he's not maximizing them, I also think Kane plays the best when he's pulling defenders out while he runs in deep. I think that's where he is really good at. Like, what he's really good at is, because he's such a threat even in the air, he pulls defenders out when people give the ball to him in the center. And so he creates a lot of space for people to run into, which is where then he passes, because then you kind of have your right backs or your left backs having to come in inside to kind of block off the gaps, and then you can have runners running in. So I feel like that is what he is good at, and I feel like that is his attribute. His attribute is not just scoring. He also
But I
does
think
pull
he
out
can-
defenders and can make good passes. And I feel like if you're playing to those strengths, then
But he
there's
can do that.
There's no harm in playing to those strengths.
He can do the same thing 20 yards up the pitch than he's doing it right now. I mean, look at, you mentioned Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He's one of the best holding up strikers in the Premier League now, and along with him, Ollie Watkins too. They do the same job. They do the same job, but they do it much into the final third of the pitch, which makes it much more easier for his striking partners, the
Yeah, but
wingers, to make runs in the more threatening areas.
That's also because Dominic Calvert-Lewin has a James Rodriguez in there that will kind of run with the ball, which Spurs don't in Ndombele. I mean, I think he's a fantastic player, but someone has to do it, right? Someone has to come in deep if you don't have ball carriers, natural ball carriers. Harry Winks just isn't good enough for me.
Yeah, I've gone for a bit of a duo that was a little bit of an early shout that was spoken about on the Bundesliga podcast, tipped by Sid, Marcus Thuram, and my pick was Alassane Player. And Alassane Player, Marcus Thuram, 2 Frenchmen for Borussia Mönchengladbach, have lit up the Champions League, it's fair to say. And it's not just a fluke, because they were lighting it up for Mönchengladbach last season. Let's not forget, Mönchengladbach didn't play in the Champions League, I think, for a couple of years. So they brought them back in the lockdown period, back to the top 4. And I mean, this season they've just gone on to kick on. And I wouldn't be surprised if teams come around, 30, 40 million price tags on them. I mean, Marcus Thuram's latest antics have put him back in that kind of pecking order to get the next transfer. But I think for sure one of the most underrated duos, I'd say. as wide forwards or two Frenchmen playing that team. If you ever watch Mönchengladbach, which I'm sure you will, I think they're playing Man City in the round of 16 in the Champions League. Just watch those two because they're pretty telepathic in the relationship, and it's quite nice to watch. On that note, that's a roundup of what we think of certain events that happen through the year. But if there's one thing that you want to, like I mentioned before, when we started off, what do you think about this time last year? What is it when you come back on this date next year you'd like to say about not your favorite club or not your favorite league or whatever it is, just football in general? Rick, what would it be?
I want, like, my ideal situation for next year is just everyone to be able to attend games in full, packed stadiums. I want to watch games where I don't have to listen to simulated crowd noise, simulated chants. I don't want to listen to any of that. I want to see people like going crazy, like drinking, like, you know, like just as rowdy as they get, as
Just the
ruthless
way it
as
was
they can be,
pre-COVID.
but yeah, I want football. Like, I feel like it was so underappreciated. We've never gone through something like this, and I've never thought, like, I'd never had to think about something like this. It was such a given that fans would always be at the stadium. You would always have professional athletes that will perform, right? And I think what I want is just that. I want packed stadiums, everyone chanting. I don't want to hear any simulations, none of that.
I want, like, I was going to say what Rick said about the fans being back in stadiums, but since he's used that, I would say that I want the refereeing standard not just in the Premier League but in Europe as well. I want VAR to change as well. I want the technology to be implemented better, and I want it to be a bit more lightning quick in the sense the like how goal line technology is used. Of course, it may take some time, but I just think that the overall level of football is just going to be increasing when the technology is rightly implemented. And yeah, I can't wait for VAR to not be a topic after every weekend.
I think I have to echo what Rick and Sid said, but along with that, I really hope that by this time next year, this Pogba fiasco comes to an end and he finds a new home for his antics.
That will never end. It's a never-ending story. It's one of those stories that go on for ages and ages until there is no resolution, and eventually Pogba is ousted the club like Mesut
He'll
Ozil.
take over Ed Woodward's position for sure at this rate.
Man, someone needs to adopt that. But he still behaves like a teenager. He needs to get going somewhere wherever he feels he's more wanted. I don't know what this insecurity he feels, but man, I just hope the situation improves for Pogba, and definitely the fact that we have an international tournament in the Euro 21, which is in next year. But I think that happens with full fanfare, and how an international tournament is as a festival is conducted. I hope that happens, because football without the fans is pretty much a training ground affair, and which we don't want to see. We want to see fans back and football in its full tilt, and I hope that happens as soon as.
Absolutely. And it's been a year like none other for football fans. I'm sure those 3 or 4 months where there was no football, we were all in our rooms thinking about what's going to happen, because we've taken it for granted, like Rick said, about fans being in the stadium or even players playing on the pitch. But it's been quite a hard year for us to watch, with simulated noise, with players not performing at the level we expect. And also, of course, clubs go through ups and downs. So that's the normal ride that football entails us with. So thanks for listening on this one. Hope you have a great year-ender. Hope you look back on 2020 with a bit of positivity, but also look ahead to 2021 with a lot more positivity, because it can only get better from here. So thank you and goodbye from us. Have a great year ahead.